Hello and welcome to TestRail Jira Integration 101. I'm going to walk you through how to set up both TestRail and Jira to enable a two-way integration that allows you to create traceability between your test cases in TestRail and your requirements or user stories in Jira, as well as report bugs straight from TestRail. So let's start by showing how to configure TestRail to integrate with Jira. All you need is to be an administrator and access the administration page. From the administration page, we want to select integration in the right-hand panel. And then we can see a button that allows you to quickly configure the Jira integration. Let's click it. What we need to do is set the Jira address. So there is an example here, so you should have something similar to this. This is for cloud. If you are using a Jira server instance, you should change the Jira version here and change to Jira Server 5, 6, 7 and later. But in this case, let's use cloud. And I'm going to copy my instance name here. And then I can set up a Jira email address and an API token to authenticate. We recommend that you use a service account because this is going to be the default account with which your bugs, etc. will be reported. So be mindful of what email you want to use here. In this case, I'm going to use mine just for demonstration purposes, and I'm going to use my own token, but I'll show you how people can set up these for their own accounts. So let's quickly enable the Jira integration. We are going to want both the defect integration and the reference integration here, and we click enable, and we need to save the settings. After saving settings, we can see that these were successfully updated, and we will be able to see in the defects and the references tabs. So in the defects, we can see that we have our instance here, our Jira instance, with the URL for the defects view, for the defect add as well, and then we have some configuration boilerplate here, which is already pre-filled, again with our Jira instance base URL, with our authentication variables and a couple of default fields. And we can see that there is something very similar for the references integration. In case you don't want to use a service account and you want everyone to configure their own authentication, you only need to direct your users to go to their settings, and we will be able to see the settings tab. And in the settings tab, everyone can configure their own Jira email address and their Jira API token, and this will enable you to have bug reports with each user as the actual reporter. And one more thing about the Jira integration is that it can be customized by project. So imagine you have a couple of projects. You need to go to the administration page, click projects, and here we can see a couple of projects. Imagine that in your organization you have a different Jira instance for each project, and you can override the configurations both for the defects and for the references. So right now they are using the global integration settings, but if you set any values here, this will override the global integration settings, and you will be able to configure more than one Jira instance integration. So you'll have at least one Jira instance per project. Now let's see how you can take full advantage of the defects integration. Let's start by looking at this configuration box here. So we have a couple of configuration blocks. We have the connection block, which has your Jira instance details, and then we have two more blocks with the fields configuration. So the push fields block, which refers to the fields that you are going to see when you are creating defects straight from inside TestRail. So it has all the default Jira issue fields, and then also the hover fields block. This block also has the same information, but this is the information that is going to be displayed after you have created a defect in TestRail and when you hover over the link and you see the details of that defect. So you can turn this on and off, but now let's imagine that you have a custom Jira field and it's a mandatory one, so you need to also add it here. Well, to do that, it's easy. First, you need to get the field ID, and let's take this bug as an example, which has this custom field, and I need to get its ID, and to do so I can simply inspect the page, and I can grab the ID from this div here. So the ID will be here, it's custom field, it's always custom field underscore something, in this case underscore 10,004. So let's go back to our TestRail instance now that we know the ID, and let's create a section for this field. Let's start by configuring the field. So to configure the field, you add another configuration block, and this configuration block must be field.settings.the ID of the field. So we already know the ID of the field, and then we need to set a couple of properties. The label, which can be anything. In this case, we are going to use the same as in Jira, so it's going to be impact. The size, we are going to say it's a compact field. The type is going to be a drop-down, because we know it's a drop-down field. And we are going to say it's required, so our TestRail users will always have to send a value for this field. And we have the settings for the field, but now we also need to add the field to the push or the hover configuration block. So let's add it on both, and let's add it after issue type. So this will be displayed after the issue type field. So you set it as on, and let's do the same here for the hover fields and say it's on. So now we have a custom field in our defects integration here in TestRail. And another thing that it allows you to do is to have a template, so that when you are submitting a defect, you always have a template to write the defect. So let's click enter a template and customize it. We can see that it has a comment you are going to submit for the test and the test details. So what we can do here is actually sort of enrich it a little bit with, let's say, with headers. So this is going to be an H2 with the description of the bug, which is going to have the comment, and then an H2 with the origin. So this is the test details, the origin that originated this defect, and we can add more fields. So if you click the add field down here, let's say for instance we also want to know let's say the name of the run where this defect is being generated. So we can also set it here, and in this case it replaced the test details. I didn't want to do that, so I'm going to also add the test details again, and I'm going to add this field, and now it has both the run and the test details on the origin block. And let's save these settings. Okay, the settings were successfully updated, as we can see here, and now let's see the defects functionality in action. Usually you will want to add a defect from a test result. So let's, for instance, open this test run here. And inside this test run, we are going to report a result. So let's say we are seeing this second test here, and we found a bug. So we are going to say this test failed. And we immediately have this dialog here, which has the defects functionality here. I'm going to first add a comment, because this is one of the fields that we set on our template. So I'm going to say there was something wrong with the remember me checkbox. And now we can push a defect straight from here by clicking the push functionality here. We can customize the summary here, so I'm going to say error on remember me checkbox. And I have my project here, which is service account. The issue type is going to be a bug, and we can see that after the issue type, like we specified, we have the impact field, which is mandatory, and we need to select a value for it. Let's say it's significant, large, and then we could set any other property here as well. And we can see that in our description we have the comment we just added on the result, and then we have on the origin we have the name of the test run, we have the name of the test, and we also have a link back to the test in order to create traceability from the bug in Jira back to TestRail. And we could also attach a file here, which would also be uploaded to Jira. but let's just submit this as is. What we can see is that the integration immediately fetches the issue ID, the bug that was just created, and we can just add the result. At this point, the bug is already created in Jira. We are just submitting the result, and we can see that we have this defect here. So we can also see a couple of details from the defect, so all the information that we just submitted, and we can even edit the defect straight from TestRail by clicking the edit functionality. So it's a form similar to the one we just submitted, and we can change anything here. So let's say we want to say that now the impact is minor or localized, and I'm going to update the issue, and it will be updated in Jira. And also we can navigate from here to Jira, and we can see our bug in Jira, and it will have all the attributes we set. So it has the description, it has the origin, and it has the link back to TestRail. So this is how you report a bug from TestRail straight to Jira. And there is also a different functionality you can use in case you don't want to use the form inside the TestRail. You can also, for instance, when you are submitting another failure here, you also have the possibility of using the add functionality, which redirects you to Jira, and you can create a bug straight inside Jira using the regular Jira form to create that bug. One disadvantage is that you then have to copy the issue ID and then add it here on the defects field, but other than that it works just fine as well. After you have submitted your bugs, you can also see the bugs in your test run by going to the right-hand panel and clicking the Defects tab. You will be able to see all the bugs that were reported in this test run. You can do the same for test plans and also milestones. So you have all the information you need to take decisions according to the bugs, and you can also see their status in Jira. So right now they are in the backlog, but when they progress and whether they're in progress or they have already been resolved, you will also be able to see that information here. Now let's see what the references integration has to offer. Reference is the word TestRail uses to refer to a user story or requirement in Jira, and these are used to set up traceability between test cases and user stories, meaning that the test case will cover that user story. So let's look at our configuration here. Once again, we have the connection block with the Jira instance details, and then we have one other block. It's the hover fields block, and it has the default Jira issue fields here, and we can set them as on or off, whether we want to see them or not in the integration, and we can move them around so they are displayed in a certain order. And these are going to be displayed when you hover over a reference in your test cases. We'll get to that in just a few moments, but before that, let's also see how we can configure a custom field. So to configure a custom field, we can do exactly like we did for defects. So we add a configuration section here. We can have one or more of these, and we call it field.settings. The ID of the field. So we are going to use the same field, the custom field 10,004, and we are going to label it impact. The size is compact, type dropdown, and it's not required in this case. And we just need to add it to our list of hover fields here to activate it and say it's on. And this is going to be our configuration. So let's save these settings, and we can see that they were successfully saved. And now let's see it in practice in the test cases repository. So now I'm in my project, I'm in the test cases page, and I'm going to set up traceability between the successfully login test case and the login user story. So I'm going to edit this test case here using this 3 panes view, and we can see that right now it doesn't have any reference. So to set up traceability, we just need to edit it, and we can add a reference here. There's also this link here you can use to quickly create a user story in Jira. So you can then use that user story as a reference, but we already have a user story in place, the SA1 user story. The issue key is what we use as a reference. So we are going to use this one here, and we are going to add SA1 to the references. Note that you can also add more than one reference. So For instance, you could have SA1 and SA2. To do this, you just need to add a comma between them. So let's save this and see the results. If I hover over this link, I can see the details for this user story. These details are fetched live from Jira, so if they are changed in Jira, you will always see the live information here. And you can also even edit the details straight from inside TestRail. So you have this form here, and you can simply update the issue, and these changes would be reflected in Jira. Right now we are not going to do that. We can also see that these links will be displayed wherever, and you can hover over them. So for instance, if I add the references column here, I'm going to add this column and update, and we can see the references for each test case. So it means that these test cases are all covering one user story. Well, in this case two. And if you hover over them, you can see the information, you can edit again, you can do all that. Not only can you associate a reference to a test case, you can also do that for a test run, a milestone, or a test plan. So let's say, for instance, for our full regression, we can say that this full regression is going to cover a couple of, is going to relate to, for instance, an epic. So we would just add the epic ID here. So for instance, let's see what epic does this user story belong to. It belongs to SA40. So we are going to say, hey, I'm going to cover this epic on this test run. And then you save the test run. And you can then see the references on the right-hand panel. And if you hover over them, you will be able to see the information for that epic. Now that you've added your story references to your test cases and you have submitted test results in TestRail and reported bugs to Jira, what else can you do? Well, you can use TestRail reports to get insightful information about your testing process, like test coverage and test results traceability. To do that, you just need to go to the reports page, and you can see a list of available reports on the right-hand panel. So there are a lot of reports here, but the ones you should focus on are the ones that mention references or defects. You can, for instance, generate a coverage for references report, which shows your test coverage, so the tests you have designed comparing to what they are covering. You can also generate 3 kinds of defects reports to investigate the data related to your defects, the defects you have reported to Jira. And you can also generate a comparison for references on the results section. This generates a report similar to a traceability report, where you can trace your test results back to your test cases and then back to your user stories. So let's demonstrate how to set up one of these. So you can leave the title, can give it any title you wish. And the trick here is to set your references. So instead of using all references, which would consider only the references you have added to your test cases in TestRail, you should use the second option. And here you are going to add every reference you want to consider, because you want to check for the references, for instance, from a sprint or from an epic. So I'm going to start by adding a couple here, so it's 1 per line. So I'm going to add, let's say, 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then I need to select the sections or test runs that I want to check against this. And right here I'm going to handpick some test runs, and I'm going to say I want to check the results from these 2, and I'm going to say OK. And what this is going to give me is the coverage for those references. So it will say whether I have a result or not for those references, and whether they are passing or failing. So we can just go ahead and add the report. It takes just a few moments to generate, but I already have some prepared. So let's start by seeing the comparison for references report. And the comparison for references report for results has this sort of information. It has the runs we added, the stats from those runs. And then the interesting part is that we can see the results by user stories. So we have our references here, which are our user stories, and we can see that, for instance, for this one, we have a couple of test cases. We can see that one of them failed here, but then it actually passed after a while, and we can see the lack of coverage. So, for instance, for SA6, we don't have any test cases with the test results. So this is important information. This is what we call a traceability report. Then we can also see the test coverage. This refers to your test design, so the test cases you have in your repository against the references you want to check for coverage. And I added the same references here, and I can see that I am covering 4 references, but 2 of them don't have any test case in the test case repository. And we can also see that some cases also don't have any reference, so maybe we missed those cases, missed adding a reference to those cases. And here we can see the list. So once again, we can see that SA6 has no test case at all written for it. So maybe we need to add a reference to a test case or create a new test case. And we can also see the test cases that don't have any reference. So we probably should add a reference, say that these tests are covering a certain user story. And finally, an example of a defects report. So this defects report is the summary for references. So once again, we are going to see the defects by reference, and we have our table with the references and then the cases. And we can see that for this case there was a bug reported. So SA55. This is a bug, and if we click here, we can go to Jira and see the bug details as well. And in this report, it also allows you to see, well, if you don't have any test case for a particular user story. The integration between TestRail and Jira is made two-way with the TestRail Jira app, which enriches your Jira issues with widgets that fetch information straight from TestRail. To install this app, simply click Apps on the top bar, and then Explore More Apps. Here we can type TestRail on the search box and hit Enter, and we can immediately see the TestRail app. Let's click this, and we can see some details about it, and we can see that it's free. To install the app, simply click Get App, and then Get It Now. In just a few moments, the app will be added to your Jira instance, and you can configure it. We can see, we can click configure here in this pop-up box, or we can click up here. So clicking configure now, and we are going to add our TestRail connection. So we just need to click add new TestRail connection and add our TestRail instance details here, our TestRail address, and we can click generate key in TestRail here, which will redirect us to TestRail, and we can immediately generate a key, which I'm going to copy, and I'm adding it to the integration key here, and I'm going to specify the login behavior as show a login button instead of an empty page, so that users in Jira can log into TestRail and see the information there. And I'm going to say that this applies to all projects. You could just limit to a certain amount of projects. Here I only have one, and I'm just going to save it as is. And just like that, we have configured our integration between Jira and TestRail. So let's see how this app enhances the information in your Jira issues. This user story was the login user story we used in previous examples, and we saw that a lot of test cases were referencing it. So how do we see it in Jira using the Jira app? We go to the right-hand panel here, and we can see these TestRail cases. By clicking Open TestRail Cases, we can see all the cases that reference this user story. So all these cases are covering the user story. And if we click the link, we will go to TestRail and we can see the case details. Another thing we can do is click the Add Test Case, and we can select the project from here. And by doing this, we can then create a new test case directly inside TestRail. But for now, let's skip this. And there's also another widget. The first time you use the app, you might have to click the 3 dots here and click TestRail Results. so that this widget here is displayed. And then you can click show. And here in this case, we can see all the results from the cases that reference this user story. So we have all these results, and we can see details from the results, like the test run they belong to, or the test plan as well. So there is a lot of information, useful information here. So this is in user stories, the typical usage for user stories. But then, for instance, if you have an epic, we saw that we added this epic reference to our milestones, to our test runs, and to our test plan. If we scroll down and we hit show, we can see on the runs, we can see all the runs that reference this epic. And by expanding this, we can see the status of the test run. We can see the plans as well. So we can see this test plan, we can see the runs inside the test plan, and we can even see the milestones that reference this epic. So we can track the global testing panorama. And then, if you have a bug you reported from TestRail and you have the reference on a test result, you will also be able to see some information about that. This is displayed in the Tests tab. In the Tests tab, you can see the test that generated this bug. So if you expand this, you can see information about what you submitted for the result in TestRail, and you can see the test run where it was generated, etc. So plenty of useful data you can see in Jira without even going inside TestRail.